Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome into the latest edition of Tider Insider TV. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris, and we are loaded tonight with all kinds of content. Of course, all of it Alabama Crimson Tide related. And we're going to start with basketball, Rodney, on the men's side, because for the second time in the last 3 years, the Crimson Tide is the SEC regular season champion. That's a huge accomplishment, particularly with the fact that Alabama's had to deal with some off-the-court distractions. But for any team in this league, including Kentucky, to win 2 out of 3 when you got 14 teams and it's as competitive as it is, major deal for Nate Oates. Keep in mind that when Oates got here, there have only been 2 championships really in the last 30 years in the regular season, 1987 and 2002. And now he's won them in 2021 and 2023. All right, last Wednesday, Alabama did it in style against their in-state rival, the Auburn Tigers. This is when they clinched the SEC title outright. It was an instant classic, Rod. I mean, you know, Alabama has not been playing as sharp, as well, not making threes, and Auburn jumped them. Auburn jumped them in Colby Coliseum. In fact, in the second half, with a little more than 10 minutes to go in the game, Auburn was up 17 points. You thought they're going to spoil everything here, but that's why this Alabama team is special. Special teams do special things, and the Crimson Tide rallied behind Jahmyr Gibbs, the SEC Sixth Man of the Year, 24 points off the bench. Noah Clowney, Brandon Miller, and Mark Sears scored 17 apiece for the Crimson Tide, and they rallied to win it 90-85 in overtime. That meant they got to cut down the nets as the SEC champions. Alabama 16-2. In the conference. They were 16-1 at this point, of course, lost Saturday. And, you know, here come the postseason awards. Brandon Miller is the SEC Player of the Year and the SEC Freshman of the Year, according to the coaches. He's the first player to win both since Kentucky's Anthony Davis in 2012. We know how good he is. He's an NBA star with the Lakers. Mark Sears earned second-team All-SEC honors by the coaches. Charles Bediako, third team, and Bediako was on the all-defensive squad. Jahmyr Gibbs was the co-sixth man of the year, as I mentioned. And joining Miller on the all-freshman team, of course, were Jaden Bradley and Noah Clowney. Of course, Miller repeated as the Associated Press SEC Player of the Year today. Now for Alabama, it's the SEC tournament, and Rodney, the opportunity hopefully to earn a #1 seed. Now, on Saturday, out in College Station, Alabama did drop its regular season finale as they lost that game by 6 out there to Texas A&M. But still, Alabama, Rod, is right where it wants to be. But there's always a but, it seems like, in sports. The last 4 games, they're only shooting about 20% from 3. They were 6 of 37 against A&M. Remarkably, 6 of 37 from 3. A&M was 28 of 29 from the free throw line. Alabama, 10 of 11, good percentage, but it got outscored by 18 at the free throw line. Shot 6 of 37 from 3 and had the lead with a couple minutes to go in the game and a chance to win.
Yeah, they're saving the threes for the tournament,
I hope
Gary.
so.
I mean, look, they're going to get hot. They can shoot the threes really well. They're going through kind of a slump right now where the threes aren't falling, but you know they can shoot it, and you certainly expect that to come back.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about this team. Yep. Are they blowing people out right now? No, not the way that they were, because they're not knocking down those threes. But when you're a team that shoots a lot of threes and makes a lot of threes, and you can still find a way to win, or at least give yourself a chance to win against the second-place team in the conference. Remember, A&M went 15-3. And that just shows you, again, how good they really are, Rodney. They don't have to be great from the three-point line. They can still find other ways to win. And then, as you said, if the three-pointers start falling, then you got a chance to see what we saw during the course of the year, where they beat Vanderbilt by 57, Georgia by 49, LSU by 40, a bunch of teams by more than 20. When they're on offensively, they absolutely annihilate people. But even when they're not, they're still good enough to beat you.
Yeah, they can explode. There's no question about how explosive they are offensively when they're hitting the threes, Gary, but they can win with defense. I mean, you know, again, they've got a lot of chemistry, a lot of teamwork. That, you know, this is a team that's won some tough games. And look, you know this is better than anyone. When you get in that tournament, there are going to be some tough games at the end that you've got to kind of have that experience to win those kind of games. I think this team has done it throughout the year. I think it'll help them in the tournament.
All right, they will start tournament play as the SEC champion and double bye recipient on Friday afternoon at noon Central Time at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville against the winner of Thursday night's game between Mississippi State and Florida. Both those teams are pretty good, particularly Mississippi State gave Alabama some trouble, even though Alabama swept them. Both games were close. Well, now it's time for Coach Talk. And Alabama, as we mentioned, is in a three-point shooting slump. There's no other way around it. The team hit just 21% of its three-pointers in the final 4 games, 3 wins and a loss. Alabama head coach Nate Oates says having 6 days, though, following Saturday's loss at A&M before playing on Friday for the SEC tournament, gives the Tide a chance to get into the gym, get some shots up, get their legs under them. And they have an opportunity now to fix their three-point shooting woes and find their shot again by Friday.
I mean, we got to get our guys' legs back under them. We can make some shots. We got to get back in the gym, work on some individual skill stuff, particularly shooting. You know, when you're playing 2 games a week since first week of January, there's not a lot of time to just work on some individual skill stuff. And we try to get in and do it. But, you know, not playing until Friday, we pretty much focused on what we need to do to get better.
All right, here's the bracket for the SEC tournament. And Rodney, as I said, Alabama has the double bye, so they only have to win 3 games to win the championship. Friday quarterfinal, Saturday semifinal, Sunday the final. You know, I've been back and forth about these conference tournaments. I know everybody loves the hoopla. To me, you win the SEC regular season championship, you got to be able to sit back and get ready for the NCAA tournament. But most conferences have them. And, you know, I guess the feeling is Bama pulled the double 2 years ago. If you're going to play in it, you might as well try to win it.
Yeah, I mean, look, they did it like you said. And 2 years ago, certainly that was a fantastic team. You look at this team, Gary. You know, heading into this tournament, you know, so many people are talking about the NCAA. Is Alabama going to be a number 1 seed? The SEC tournament is huge. Winning that, extremely big. You know, the focus from Nate Oates with his players is, look, guys, we want to go in this tournament. We want to play really, really well. You want to play well in March. That carries over to the NCAA tournament. It
sure does. Right now, ESPN bracketologist Joe Lunardi has 8 SEC teams in the Big Dance, and Alabama is the number 1 seed in the South region, of course, which would put them in Birmingham for the first and second round. And I know Alabama fans are hoping that is the case. They bought a lot of tickets. Gonna be some issues if they're not. All right, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Missouri, Auburn, Arkansas, and Mississippi State are those 8 teams that Lunardi has in the Big Dance. Mississippi State, one of the first 4 in. All right, let's get back to the SEC tournament. For Alabama to get that number 1 seed, if they were to get upset on Friday by either Florida or Mississippi State, do you think that would knock them off the 1 line, or have they done enough to be there regardless?
You know, who knows? I really don't know how that would play out. I think, obviously, Alabama wins a game or 2. They probably got that locked up.
Do you like them to win the tournament? Or do you think somebody else might slip up and win?
You know, I tell you, Gary, you kind of talked about the way they've been playing. It's not that they've been playing poorly, because they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. We forget that fact. So they're a team that's had a lot of momentum. You hope that they can carry it over into the SEC tournament. You know, again, but it's going to be really competitive.
Well, just like with Nick Saban on the football side of it, Nate Oates understands you got to coach them up. You got to have a good program, but you got to recruit. I mean, that's the bottom line. You got to bring talented players in. And Alabama added a late piece to the 2023 recruiting class as Chris Parker committed to the Crimson Tide on Friday afternoon. He was one of the highest rated non-committed players for the 2023 class, 6'6", 170-pound wing player out of the state of Florida. He selected the Crimson Tide over Villanova, Central Florida, and Missouri. He is from Crossroad Academy in Quincy, Florida, and is ranked as the 10th best player in the state of Florida. And Rodney, we know if you're in the top 10 in that state, if you're in the top 10 as a prospect in either California, Texas, Florida, those states, you're pretty good.
You know, Gary, you look at Chris Parker and you think about potential. I mean, he's 6'6", he's 170, he can shoot the 3. You know, when you talk about comparisons, some people have said, hey, he's got a little bit of Herb Jones in him. He's got a little bit of Brandon Miller in him. This is a guy potentially, I think he's potentially better than he's even ranked.
Watch the handles. I mean, he's shorter than Brandon Miller, but that's one thing about Alabama. They want players, regardless of your height, that can handle the ball and that can shoot from the outside. And you see there at 6'6", the spin move, behind the back dribble, he's got that ability. I think he's a perfect fit. I think for Nate Oates and what he likes to do on offense and defense too, for that matter, fit is important. And this young man certainly looks like he fits in with what Alabama likes to do. All right, still to come on Tider Insider TV tonight. We'll recap Alabama women's short-lived SEC tournament appearance. They're going into the NCAA tournament, hopefully. I think they'll get in, but they're going to go in on kind of a skid. We'll have that for you coming up. Also, Alabama football had 13 players at the NFL Combine last week in Indianapolis, but which one stood out? We'll discuss that. And, of course, coming up, as always, we get into your phone calls, emails, and tweets. The phone number, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us at the address on your screen or even tweet at us using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. 23 years and still going. We'll be back after this.
And we miss way too many looks at the rim. You have to finish shots. You can't turn the ball over, and you got to make free throws. So we'll sit back and continue to try and see what happens to us on Selection Sunday.
Listen, Alabama women's basketball had a great regular season too. I don't want to diminish that, but they were looking at finishing in the top 4 easily, having a double bye at the SEC tournament in Greenville, South Carolina, and then they lost their 3 final regular season games. That allowed them to have to play a day earlier than they would have, and then they played the last place team, Kentucky, the number 14 seed, and got beat. And they lost that game, 71-58. Very disappointing way to finish the season. Now, I think on Sunday night they'll hear their name called in the NCAA Women's Selection Show beginning that evening on ESPN. But let's say this, Rod, just like we're talking about with Alabama men in this SEC tournament. It's important to be building momentum. Alabama women trending in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, when you lose those last, 4, and then you lose the first game in the SEC tournament to the last place team, that's not momentum. That's in the wrong direction.
That is, but you know what? If they get that phone call or get that announcement on the bracket on Sunday, it starts fresh. And the NCAA tournament was this team's goal. I think they're in regardless, but still, they just didn't finish it off quite the way they would have wanted to, but new life could be coming on Sunday night. Welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. I'm Gary Harris. Rodney Orr is right next to me. The Crimson Tide had 13 of its players invited to the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and a lot of guys look good, but I guess running back Jahmyr Gibbs was the one that probably stood out. You're not surprised by that, Rodney. This guy is lightning fast, well under 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, surprisingly strong. I mean, people like to use the term scat back, but that's not correct. He can downhill run you, too. This guy's an outstanding prospect.
Yeah, I mean, he measured in at, 5'9.5", 199, right at 200 pounds. So he's solidly built. You talked about the speed. I mean, that's tremendous speed. I think he was, the second fastest running back in the Combine.
He was, behind the kid A-Chain at A&M.
Yeah, and A-Chain's a world-class sprinter. So you talk about Jahmyr Gibbs. He's got the ability, Gary, not only as a running back, but also very dynamic as a receiver, as a kick return guy. He's really versatile. Some people have compared him a little bit to Alvin Kamara. So he's a guy that the NFL is going to really like his ability at doing so many different things.
Yeah, you said it. I think his NFL comparison is another former Alabama running back, although he finished up at Tennessee, and that's Kamara, because he can get out of the backfield and catch passes. He can run between the tackles. He certainly can be used out on the perimeter. He's an outstanding prospect. I thought Will Anderson looked good. I don't think anybody really did anything to hurt themselves. Of course, Bryce Young did not go through any drill work. He'll wait and throw on his pro day here later this month in Tuscaloosa. But Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy who's got a chance, possibly, to sneak into that late part of the first round, or certainly as a second rounder. Let's stay with the Combine, and this is something that we don't see just at Alabama. In fact, Rodney, you and I have discussed before, we think Alabama does a pretty good job of verifying its heights and weights. But this year there were some former Crimson Tiders that did come in a little bit under what they were listed at Alabama. Bryce Young, just over 5'10", listed at 6 feet. We mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs, 5'9" plus after being listed at 5'11". But again, in DJ Dale listed at 6'3", was 6'1". But actually, Tyler Steen listed at 6'5", was 6'6". Yeah. So I don't pay too much attention to that. I think people get hung up on these heights and weights. Bottom line is, can they play football?
Yeah, well, first of all, the NFL Combine, they're measuring. This is going to be the strictest measurements that there are. They're going to be precise. And again, I don't think anybody was really surprised necessarily at Bryce Young's size, at his height. But, Gary, I was a little surprised that he came in at 204 pounds.
Yeah. Some people were worried about him being 190.
That's right.
He's listed at 194, and he came in at 204. He'll throw again, like we said, at his pro day. Rodney, I mean, obviously we'd like to see him be the number 1 quarterback taken. We'd like to see him be the number 1 overall pick. C.J. Stroud looked good. Obviously, the kid from Florida, Richardson, has, the physical just – He wows you. He has trouble throwing the football, and then Will Levis is another guy. Do you think that Bryce will be the first quarterback taken?
Well, obviously, I think the top 2 are Stroud and Bryce Young. I really don't think you can go wrong either way. Does Bryce's size hurt him? I wouldn't really think so, Gary. You've seen Kyler Murray drafted high, obviously. Again, I think it just depends on which team, wants to make that determination. Because, look, I thought Stroud was, towards the end of this past season, he was really, really good. But Bryce, when you talk about the career and all the things that he has, it's going to be hard not to take him ahead of Stroud.
Drew Brees is one of the best to ever do it. He was right at 6 feet. Tua is only 6 feet. I mean, you don't have to be 6'4". Bottom line is you better be able to throw the football. All right, let's move on. Alabama softball had an excellent week on the diamond as they won over Southern Mississippi last week, 5-0. Then in the Crimson Classic, they continued that streak of shutouts. Rodney, they shut out every one of their opponents. They went 5-0 in the Crimson Classic with 5 shutouts. That puts their shutout streak at 6 tonight going into this game. They're playing this evening over at the Rhodes House against Western Michigan. A lot of worry about the pitching staff behind Montana Fouts, but boy, they really stepped it up. All the pitchers looked great over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, what an amazing performance by the team overall, Gary. And again, I think it's going to be really interesting. Once we get into the SEC, you're talking about that depth of the pitching. I think that's going to be very important.
Fouts is the SEC pitcher of the week. On the baseball side of it, well, they're unbeaten. You can't be any better than 12-0 after 12 games. Alabama baseball is 12-0. They had another big week as well, and then over the weekend winning a series against the University of Illinois, Chicago, UIC. And what about this freshman, man? Colby Shelton out of Florida. I got to text Coach Bo and say, hey, did you know he was going to be this good? Ronnie had 5 home runs in that 3-game series, including 2 grand slams. Alabama hit grand slams in 4 consecutive games. That's a program record. They're playing tonight over in Homewood against Sanford. We'll have highlights on the news at 10, but Bama baseball looking great. And still to come on TITV, we're going to get to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, that phone number, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. We want to hear from you, Tider Insider Nation, next right here on TITV. More staff changes at Alabama. Charlie Strong coming back for his second stint as an analyst. He's now listed on the coaching staff on the RollTide.com roster. And reportedly, Coach Sal Sinceri, man, one of my favorites, whether he's on the field. He's been serving Coach Saban as a special assistant to the head coach. He's getting back out on the field, joining Charles Kelly and Coach Prime out there at Colorado, reportedly as the defensive tackles coach. We're going to miss Coach Sal around here, I can tell you that. Welcome back into TITV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Let's jump out on the phone and Alan over on the phones, and Alan over in Gadsden is going to lead us off tonight. Hey, Alan.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Doing great.
That's good. Who's coming back, or who we got coming in for wide receivers next year?
Alan, obviously Jermaine Burton's back. You've got Isaiah Bond, some young players, Kendrick Law, and again, there's some other guys, obviously, that have been here. But the guy that I really watch in terms of newcomers, I think, is Malik Benson, the junior college transfer. He's #1 JUCO player in the country. Scott brings legit speed. I mean, he's sub 10.5, not just a speed guy. He has receiver skills. He's a guy, Malik Benson, don't forget the name.
All right. Thank you for that phone call over in Gadsden. Now, Rick and Brent will get to you when we come back on the other side. Plus, we'll have our email question of the day when TITV returns right here on WVUA 23. Welcome back. Let's get to our email question of the day, and it is brought to you by KDM Service Corporation, serving your family like our family. For all your air conditioning and heating needs, it's KDM Service Corporation. All right, let's get to that email of the day. Do you think A.J. McCarron will sign with an NFL team? That's from Lori in Fairhope. He's playing, of course, for St. Louis in the XFL. Rodney, you and I discussed this on my radio show. I don't think he really cares. He played 8 years as a backup in the NFL. He's made plenty of money. I think he's just enjoying being on a team where he's the starting quarterback, and he's actually getting to go out there and play every week.
Yeah, and he made a comment, basically, Gary, saying exactly what you just said. And I think he's enjoying the opportunity to play where his sons can see him play, young kids. So my guess is probably not.
If he does get an offer, an opportunity, I'm sure he would look into it, but I think he's enjoying playing football. And like we said, 8 years in the NFL, he's made a lot of money. All right, let's get back to the phone lines, and let's go down to Brent and talk with our friend Rick. Hey, Rick, good evening. How are you?
Fine. How are y'all tonight?
Doing great, Rick.
Yeah, were y'all disappointed about they didn't do the trophy at halftime, and Coach Saban wasn't there, and no football team was there? I know they had a little ceremony before it, but I was real disappointed that they didn't do the trophy like they have in the past.
Well, I think they're going to go away from that, Rick. I kind of think it started with the COVID situation, and it's a basketball game, and I understand that ODK Foy Foy ODK Sportsmanship Trophy going to the win of Iron Bowl. That's been a tradition. But I think both schools have just decided, Rodney, pretty much that, you know what, it's a basketball game. There to see basketball. This is a football trophy. So I don't think we're going to see that anymore.
I don't either. I really don't. And again, I actually didn't know until Rick just pointed it out that they didn't do that. Is this the first time? No, you said.
No, it kind of started with COVID, and I can't remember if they, I don't think they've done it since that time. So I think the last time they did it was following the 19 game, which Auburn won down at Auburn. So I think that's something that we'll see continuing. All right, let's get to an email question. We got time for one more email, and it is from Tyler in Hoover. Is Dylan Lonergan playing baseball, the freshman quarterback? My understanding right now, Rodney, is that he's not, that he's just going to focus on football. Could that change somewhere along the line? He's a great baseball player, Major League Baseball prospect, but from what I know right now, he's getting ready for spring football, which starts March 20th.
One thing, Gary, he was not going to enroll early. He was going to stay in high school, play spring baseball, had an opportunity to be a Major League draft pick, but the reason he's here is he wanted to go through spring practice, compete. This is a great opportunity for him because, again, I know you've got Jalen Milroe, you've got Ty Simpson, a lot of hope for both of those guys, but this is a great opportunity for both of those freshman quarterbacks.
All right, thanks for the phone calls and emails. We'll be back to wrap up TITV right after this. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of TITV. But a reminder, if you missed any of the show or you just want to catch it again, tonight it'll be on at 10:30 following the news at 10, or you can catch it anytime at WVUA23.com. All right, for Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. We're going to leave you tonight with the Alabama rowing team's only spring regatta this past Saturday against Eastern Michigan. They swept the visitors on Senior Day. It's quite an event, beautiful day on the White Warrior River. You know what they like to say, Rodney?
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. So we'll leave you with that tonight, and we'll talk to you again next week. Same time, same place. WVUA 23, 6:30 next week. Have a great night, everybody.